This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for listening, guys. What a day July 1st is going to go down as in SMU history as the Mustangs are officially in the ACC. We are here to recap it all, including some big recruiting wins recently as well. Been on the road, moving down to Florida just for a couple weeks to spend some time working and staying with some family. But before we get to all of that, got to remind you guys, we are presented by our friends at StatusJet. StatusJet.com. Reach out to David Henry and his team today so that you can schedule the getaway of a lifetime. The 4th of July is this week. And guess what? StatusJet could still get you wherever you wanted to go to for the 4th of July, whether it be out of the country, in the country. StatusJet has contacts all over the world to make your experience one that is incredibly memorable. So reach out to StatusJet today. Mention code PONYUPACC for a discount on a round trip flight. You could go with family. You could go with friends. You could make a business trip out of it for later this summer. Reach out to StatusJet. They'll be able to help you plan that perfect experience and keep up with that level of luxury you'd expect from a private jet charter experience. So appreciate StatusJet for their support of the On the Pony Express podcast. We're also pumped to introduce you guys to a new sponsor today. We'll do that in just a couple minutes. AKM Turf and Greens, welcomed to the On the Pony Express family. So we'll talk about them in just a moment. But I do want to lead off with the ACC officially welcoming SMU on July 1st into the conference. What an incredible day it is for SMU as they get welcomed in officially, and they did it in a big way. Rented out Happiest Hour for an ACC kickoff party. The ACC Network, ACC PM, was broadcasting live there. Some of our friends in the program were in Dallas to be joined by multiple SMU coaches and leadership, and also have some Cal and Stanford representation on there as well. Of course, Cal and Stanford don't get in officially until August, but they were welcomed in just like SMU was on July 1st with a big announcement. But this was really a day that was all about SMU. And Rhett Lashlee and his staff got a couple commitments to go public, so help that on the recruiting front. But also the event at Happiest Hour in downtown Dallas was a perfect way to execute the start of SMU's historic ACC era, the return to the power conferences. And Rhett Lashlee talked a little bit about it on ACC PM. He talked about it with reporters after the fact. SMU's been here before. They're not a school that has been imagining this moment. They're not a school that has been hoping that they'd be let in the door. SMU's hoping to get their seat back at the table, and they did just that by officially joining the league on July 1st. And that's different than some of these other programs that have made the jump up to the Big 12 or other leagues across the country. And I think that's important to note. And as SMU's story gets told out there a little bit more and more over the coming years in the ACC, look, everybody knows the death penalty, but not many people know just how big of a struggle it was day in, day out to get university leadership on the same page, to get certain majors started, to start paying coaches more and more, to do all the things that a university that's serious about athletics should do. It took a minute because of what athletics, and in particular football for sure, took away from the university there for a little bit. They didn't want that black mark on their record again, and that's why it was so carefully done to bring football back and to eventually build it into a program that spends money and is consistently doing the right things that power conference programs should want to do, both monetarily and on the field. And certain things have taken longer than other aspects of the program to come along. There's no question about it. But Rhett Lashlee mentioned gratitude. I think SMU fans, a lot of them had a lot of gratitude about getting back into the power conference ranks. SMU has 3 claimed national championships, and they have so much history with Doak Walker and the Pony Express and all of those things that have happened throughout the years, of course. And SMU kind of showcased that a little bit with the intro to ACC PM. If you haven't gotten a chance to watch it on the ACC Network, give it a watch. You probably pull it up on Watch ESPN and ESPN apps. But they made sure to tell a little bit of the history in that respect. That SMU has produced some greats, and they have a Heisman Trophy winner, and they have 3 claimed national championships. That's different than other programs that are making this jump. SMU is getting back to where they were and wanted to be when it came to the power conference ranks, and the ACC accomplishes that for them. So it's a historic day in that respect. But all the coaches, all the leadership, Rick Hart talked about that the work is not done. Now it becomes a little bit of a different scope and a different maybe speed. And of course, some people out there are going to take that and say, oh, they're just going to slow down. They're quitting, whatever. No, they had September 1st, SMU found out they were getting into the ACC. It's July 1. All of that is in a 10-month 10-month process to assemble a team, to raise more money, which obviously SMU did. They hit 5,000 Mustang Club members on Monday. They topped $125 million for the ACC competitiveness campaign. They touted the $159 million that they raised over the past year, best in Texas. It has been a process that has been accelerated in such a short period of time, because before you know where you're going, the only thing SMU's been doing is raising money and earmarking it for this moment. So they were able to raise $100 million in that first week. They were able to take care of things like the on-campus studio for the ACC Network that had to happen. If you walk into Armstrong Fieldhouse now, that open window situation up top where the recruiting lounge was, totally walled off. It's a studio now. It's a production facility for the ACC Network and for SMU to quickly jump into that realm that the ACC Network requires of SMU and its member institutions. So, and Cal and Stanford with the Pac-12 Network, they have infrastructure like that. That was something, though, that when SMU went through the process, that wasn't earmarked. Hey, by the way, you're going to have to pay your exit fee for the American. You're going to have to, obviously, tier 1 TV revenue isn't going to be yours. All these things you're going to have to pay for. And oh, by the way, now that we think about it, a couple months in, you need an on-campus production studio that is an 8-figure process and an 8-figure expense. So SMU is spending money like crazy to make this happen, but they had to be organized and had to go about all the different things that they need to address, hire new staff. And in a time when college athletics, and I wrote this, in a time when college athletics is having to cut staff, having to reevaluate resources on the university level, not talking about NIL or coaches' salaries, true staffing, SMU expanded. SMU has spent money on more facilities. And of course, the Gary Weber End Zone Complex is going to open in later this summer. SMU is committed, and ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips talked with the media, and the video's on the Pony Express's YouTube channel. If you're watching, or if you're on the site, we posted it. The thing that SMU has done at a very impressive clip, one of the things he mentioned, is spend in facilities. And so when you look at SMU, and Rick Hart said the work's not done, and I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, by the way, they're going to announce this fall that they're going to do more and more facilities, and it's going to be another 100, 200 million and things like that. There definitely needs to be a little bit of okay, let's just operate the right way for a minute here. Let's let some people recharge their bank accounts that they've tapped into heavily, in a sense. SMU's commitment to doing things at a power conference level is there. And not only to do it at a power conference level, they want to be among the top. And look, there's Alabama, there's Texas, there's, your Georgias and your Oregons, and there's places that, because of land and because of just how long they've had access to those type of resources, are always going to be able to maybe flex a little bit more than an SMU. But SMU is going to be near the top of facility conversations, at least being able to always refresh, always keep things on the cutting edge. I mean, you think about the football locker room, I feel like every 2-3 years it's been completely redone, and they've, just given everything a facelift. Now, that was lipstick on a pig. They're going to be redoing a bunch of stuff over there in forward on that north end zone side once the south end zone is complete. But it's a process that is not going to stop, and SMU's commitment to doing it at a high level is something that a couple sources mentioned to me as at an event recently. It's an envy of athletic department leaders around the country that SMU can spend the way they can. And they have the mega donors like David Miller and Bill Armstrong and some of the others, that Gary Weber, that have contributed the way they have. And there's so many others, of course, but that's something that not everyone has. And in terms of being able to dial them up right away and make things happen and make things change, that is where SMU is one of the envies of the country. SMU, of course, operates its athletic department budget on a it's a loss for the university. It's written off, but it's never a situation where, wow, it's in dire straits. This is, they're going to be running bare bones because of revenue sharing and NIL. It's going to change, but SMU is also adding staff. They're in a kind of I hate to go back to the word envy, but they're in an enviable position in college athletics because of the way they've teed this all up and the way they've been preparing for so long. So the next step in competition is for SMU's coaches to continue across all sports to recruit and recruit quality talent, retain quality talent, and coach them up and execute the plan that on their end can get SMU to the top of this new league. 8 conference championships in the American on the way out, the number 1 school in the Directors Cup in the American on the way out. SMU's going in with a lot of momentum, and the Happiest Hour event I thought was the perfect way to kick off SMU's run in the ACC. You could have picked a couple different places. SMU's done events at Armstrong, and which is a great facility. They've done events, at a Dallas Hall front lawn or other spots, or in Moody. This was the way to announce to Dallas that SMU was without a doubt back where they belong. So very cool event. It was, like I said, we're in Florida. I traded some texts with some people. They said, man, everything good with the ACC always happens when you're in Florida. I said, I know. So I'll work on that for the future. But SMU was able to, outside of it being hot, make a statement with a huge party in the middle of downtown Dallas. I mean, you could have picked maybe a Clyde Warren Park, but it wouldn't have had any inside availability. There's maybe a couple other spots they could have done it, but Happiest Hour was the spot. Talked with a couple of ACC Network folks that morning and right before the show started, and they were saying how legit this is, and they'll be back in August for their ACC road tour to preview the season and get with the Mustangs. And of course, later this month, ACC Media Days will be there in Charlotte for that, Monday, July 22nd. But that program for 2 hours or so was pretty much all about SMU and about all the different things that SMU's done. It was one big giant SMU ad. And it's a moment that a lot of people have been waiting on for so long. So congratulations to everybody who's stuck with it, including us journalists, I guess, covering the team. What a cool day. It came across just so cool on TV. And that's, in terms of the rest of the league, what really matters. Like I watched a little bit of Feinbaum yesterday, and they were on OU's campus. Not as much of a party, but also very, I mean, it's the SEC. There were people there. There were people excited about that. but it just looked like such a party in the background. It was just well executed by the whole team at SMU and the ACC Network to make that happen. And it made a statement, I think, to the rest of the league that, hey, come to Dallas, enjoy yourself, have a good time. And SMU looks forward to being in this league. They're all about competing at the highest level, which ultimately should help the league be better than it was on Sunday when SMU wasn't in the ACC. So SMU enters the league as a program committed to winning and doing it at a high level. And I think that's the most important takeaway for yesterday. It came through loud and clear on the broadcast. So congratulations to everybody. And it's quite the start to a new era for SMU. Do want to introduce you guys to great new friends of ours at ontheponyexpress.com. Really excited about this one. AKM Turf and Greens. You can go there, akmturfandgreens.com. Alex Carpenter, a former professional golfer, got out of playing golf and got into the turf and green space. And in Dallas, it's so hot. It's tough to keep your yard in shape. Alex and his team do incredible custom work for you guys that are out there looking for projects like putting greens, turfing your yard. And it gives you such a different feel. And no more you have to worry about weeds growing on the side of your house or not getting grass to grow, whether it's big, whether it's a small area. Alex Carpenter and his team at AKM Turf and Greens can build you the yard of your dreams. They're going to work with me on the side of my house. I just can't get any grass to grow. They're going to fix the drainage issues, all those things. And for all of you guys out there that are trying to take advantage of this, you can, by using the code PONYUP, you get $500 off your project. Really incredible offer there. Take advantage of it by emailing info@akmturfandgreens.com. It's a family-owned business right here in Dallas, and couldn't be more excited to introduce you guys to the AKM team and start working with them, and both on the podcast and, of course, my backyard. So going to be a fun time for us at ontheponyexpress.com with AKM. Looking forward to showing you guys more of their work. Again, whether it's a small space, large space, they can work with you on your needs and making it first class. They've got all sorts of options on turf and ways to make your yard look like a one of a kind. So welcome AKM Turf and Greens to the On the Pony Express family. And remember, $500 off your project when you reach out, mention the code PONYUP or On the Pony Express. Email them, info@akmturfandgreens.com. Well, about 18 minutes into the podcast, we told you guys in the beginning, Rhett Lashlee and his staff got a couple commitments on July 1st. Well, that's all well and good. We're going to go back, though, as SMU did pick up multiple commitments heading into the ACC. They hadn't, last time we talked on the Pony Express podcast, we hadn't been able to break them down for you guys just yet. And those are two longtime targets for SMU, both on the offensive side of the ball. So Rhett Lashlee and Casey Woods and them get a little bit more help. And we begin with Devinn Farris, longtime target. And we'll talk about the class overall and kind of where things stand later on once we get caught up here. But one thing I mentioned on the board is that recruiting is kind of a roller coaster. And on July 1st, we'll talk about this, SMU beat out Oklahoma for a linebacker. On the same day, they also lost out on a linebacker to Texas Tech. And so it just one team in the SEC, a lot of momentum. Brent Venables, defensive coordinator, who is a linebackers coach by trade. SMU beats them out for a linebacker that they wanted, brought in on an official visit. Texas Tech picked in the bottom half, I believe, of the Big 12 today. Joey McGuire, well-respected Texas high school football coach, but not exactly a defensive savant. He's an offensive head coach. Caleb Burns goes to Texas Tech. Well, Devinn Farris officially visited SMU all the way back on May 17th. Devinn Farris, the Houston Heights offensive tackle, went on to take official visits to Mississippi State, Houston, Pitt, and he took a couple other visits, I believe. He might have even canceled an Ole Miss official visit. And talking with sources after that May 17th weekend, they felt like they were in a good spot. And Devinn was somebody that all the way back when he first visited SMU for that junior day in March, I believe it was March, I said, man, this kid's so impressive. He really likes himself some SMU. And Devinn, always talkative, always telling me about how much he enjoys his time at SMU. He just really wanted to take more visits. But SMU wanted him on that May 17th big Pony Express weekend. And so he ends up, here's the backstory. He ends up silently committing to SMU and taking other visits out of state, some ACC schools, an SEC school in Mississippi State, and the Mustangs reel in his commitment on June 25th. So this is a big pickup for Garen Justice. Devinn Farris is the third offensive line commit in the class for him. Garen is doing a good job of going anywhere from sleeper and a Jacob Maava, kind of Drew Hill mold to Devinn Farris. Here he is. He's got Power 5 offers. He's got SEC offers. And SMU's the one that reels him in. So Devinn has told me they feel like he can play all over the offensive line. And I think that's something that's important. And we've seen that. We've seen that with a guy like Justin Osborne and some of these others that SMU's brought in, Savion Byrd, PJ Williams to an extent. So versatility is key. SMU likes to cross-train their guys. They like to give them film it just about everywhere. And Devinn Farris is a solid pickup out of Houston. And so that was one of two commitments on the day for SMU on June 25th. So nice win over ACC and SEC programs to get Devinn Farris out of Houston. SMU wasn't done with commitments on that day. They landed a familiar face for SMU as Miles Uter, brother of 2024 SMU signee Graham Uter, out of Daphne, Alabama, committed to SMU. He had offers from Troy, UAB, Jacksonville State, also had some other offers, had a couple of Power 5, Georgia Tech, Boston College offers. He camped a bunch of different programs. I know LSU had a lot of interest. Slade Nagel, the tight ends coach, had been recruiting him for a while, but they just, they didn't offer. And so this is a pickup for SMU that he can kind of sit back a little bit and develop. He is 6'4", 225. He's put down some decent numbers. I like his movement skills. I do wonder how he's going to fare coming from a Bayside Academy to the ACC in terms of the physicality in the run blocking game. But that's something that with tight ends, I mean, you're going to find out real quick if they've got the physicality to do it, and it's just a matter of developing their body, or they might not be able to stick with it, and it'll be something that is a big hurdle for them. But he's tested fairly well over the course of this summer in terms of what he's been able to do out there on the camp circuit. So this was somebody that SMU evaluated in person and had him work out, and they really liked what they saw. So I think it's a good program guy type of addition for SMU in a tight end room that is in pretty good shape. You've got RJ Maryland, who, if he, has a good year, could go pro. So that's something to watch. He's not in his final year just yet. And then you have Matthew Hibner, who does have 2 years of eligibility remaining, big body tight end who transferred in from Michigan. You have Adam Moore, who's kind of approaching stud category, in my opinion, in terms of his upside, his future. You have Trip Reardon, who the staff seems to like, big body as well there with Trip. So the tight end room starting to look pretty solid overall. And so you get a developmental piece here in Miles Uter to jump on board in this 2025 recruiting class. July 1st, SMU had a trio of targets set to announce, and we're monitoring multiple targets closely here over the coming couple of weeks. And if you're not on the ponyexpress.com, I wrote an article, multiple over the last week, really teeing up where things stand with some top targets in the coming days and weeks. As July is hit, I mean, this is the time where players do make decisions on where they're going to go play their college football, and most stick with it. They don't necessarily, flip. I mean, there are flips late in the cycle, or senior evals happen and a big school comes in, but this is usually when guys like to solidify where they're going to go to college. And we're seeing more and more commitments, and there are hits, there are misses. That's how recruiting is. I said this on the board, I think maybe this morning before I recorded this podcast. This is the first time that SMU, in my opinion at least, has been, I think, in consistent recruiting battles where I think they are, for the most part, and again, offensive line, tight end, you can kind of look at those positions. And outside of Devinn Farris, you could say, is it really like that impressive? No, but those are also two positions that are kind of crapshoots, really, to land and hit on prospects. I mean, remember, guys, Marcus Bryant, who started a bunch of games for SMU at left tackle, he was the lowest rated offensive line commit in that class. I think Branson Hickman was the lowest rated in his class. I think maybe they were in the same class, but two bottom guys. Both of them I liked because of Branson's wrestling background, Marcus's leanness and athleticism, and they end up being the best ones out of that group. And so, offensive line, you're looking for traits. Tight end, I believe 12 of the 30-something NFL draft picks this year didn't sign with an FBS college out of high school. So it just goes to show you're looking for some traits on those. And so it's hard to sit back and say, unless you're getting a for sure bona fide dude, that, hey, this is a bad, this is a bad take, or this is a, weak take, what have you. But all that to say, like, SMU has been in good recruiting battles across the board for all the guys they've gone after. I mean, really. I mean, you look at them going after Kamorian Morgan, who's down to Baylor, Texas Tech, and SMU. Who knows where he goes? But you look at some of these other prospects like Caleb Burns, in-state schools, Baylor and Texas Tech, all over him. Houston really didn't want him to leave. They had a Smith Orogbo, a 5-star type of talent on campus. He ends up going to Texas. Michael Turner, the 4-star running back's a big recruiting battle. Well, SMU went into July 1st with the trio of planned announcements that the coaching staff was really honing in on. And they ended up missing on Caleb Burns, who we'll talk about right now. And the Mustangs did not get him. He is a linebacker out of Houston, Cy Falls. He commits to Texas Tech. And a little bit of a backstory. I don't want to spend too much time on it because, one, I think SMU is going to still try and recruit him. He was a guy that came in on that May 17th weekend. He told us SMU led. They were very much the favorite, I would say, until he ended up going to Texas Tech for that official visit. And the Red Raiders were able to just get in there and kind of sell him on their plan for him. And, that is, if there's anything that Rhett Lashlee and his staff might try and tweak next year, or at least like if I was on staff, maybe I would say is, hey, the Pony Express weekend, the Pony Express weekend, maybe that needs to be like June 14th weekend, the second weekend in June or something like that. That way you have a little bit better of an idea of, all right, so-and-so's taken a couple official visits already. If we get him to pop, then we maybe don't have to worry about him flipping because he either has an official visit right after that, okay, maybe he's a little tired for it, he's not going to pay as much attention, or our message is still going to ring true when he comes to make a decision at the end of June or early July. I think that's kind of an example of what happened with Caleb here. And to give you guys the backstory, about a week and a half ago, I got a text from somebody not affiliated with SMU sources or anything like that. They said, hey, saw your Caleb Burns pick a while ago. You might want to keep an eye on Texas Tech. I'm hearing some confidence. And it's a good source of mine, friend of the program. And I said, okay, all right. And I checked in on it, and there's certainly confidence over there. There's confidence on SMU's side. And then you start hearing, okay, all right, now we're having to go into overdrive and keep him, quote unquote, maybe locked in, because he had given them a little bit of a good feeling. I don't think there was a silent, but he had given them a good feeling coming off the May 17th weekend. So SMU really battled here to the end, and that's why I don't think this one is over. He could very well stick, but I just don't think it's over for sure just yet. So we'll keep an eye on it here, but he's somebody that is certainly, one that when we talk about Mark Iheanachor committing, they complement each other really well. SMU would love to get both of them if they can. But that's a prime example of how recruiting can be sometimes. You just maybe lose a little bit of momentum. It's about, can you get it back, and how do you stop the other schools from capitalizing? And speaking of that, SMU was able to capitalize on a top target. We'll talk about him in just a second. I do want to mention Kobe Foreman, a prospect that I had a pick for a long time on SMU. And again, he visited in early June. He committed to Oklahoma State. And from what I gathered, SMU basically took stock of where they're at with the cornerback position. They have Zay Gentry and Javion Holiday, two big-bodied corners committed. And it just felt like, we're talking with a couple people, that SMU felt really good about three safeties they have now with Nathan Tillman decommitting and Zay Gentry and Javion Holiday. And so they opted to really just kind of cool here and just, move on and stick with the five that they have. Basically, SMU's got the entire secondary lined up here for the 2025 season and beyond if all these guys end up starting at some point. So they've got five guys committed. They really just kind of cooled and felt good about where they were at with their group. So they didn't end up, pressing there in the end for Kobe Foreman. So I know that was a notable name that maybe we didn't talk about kind of down the stretch here as decisions started to come up. With that being said, SMU did beat out Oklahoma for a commitment on Monday, and Mark Iheanachor out of Harbor City, California, Narbonne, one of the top producers of high school talent in the country. SMU reels him in over Oklahoma. He did have a Washington official visit lined up that he canceled. We've talked a lot about him. Cody Belair, our national scout, who was on the podcast earlier this week, or last week maybe, time flies, talked about him. Yeah, last week. It's Tuesday. Talked about him and how he's a true thumper. And that is something where, again, I think Maurice Crum would love to get Caleb Burns and Mark Iheanachor together in this class because they do complement each other well. But also, if you look at the linebacker position in the future, you have Alex Kilgore, Brandon Maizono, Justin Medlock as kind of the sophomores who have 3 years of eligibility remaining. You have Brandon Booker and Zach Smith, who have both played like borderline safety type of roles at various points for their high school defenses. They're freshmen. In the 2025 class, if you picked up a thumper, that would be really, really nice, because you do lose kind of a true thumper in my opinion, Kobe Wilson, and then Jaquandis Burns and Ahmad Walker leave after this year. The goal is Alex Kilgore and Brandon Maizono take over. Justin Medlock still in that room. Brandon Booker, Zach Smith, they love. I would imagine they honestly try to, because I still think they want to address the linebacker position with some like depth. I would think this is the perfect spot for sign Mark Iheanachor, who really honed in on Dallas. That was something that I heard throughout his recruitment, and Maurice Crum has been recruiting him for years now, even before he got to SMU. Dallas really sold him, being in a big city, tons of opportunities, and they, very few times does the package deal pay off, but they got it in this sense with Mark Iheanachor and the next prospect we'll talk about. But he would come in, be a true thumper, fill that role. If they can find a way to flip Caleb Burns or find a linebacker they like as a senior eval, great. Then you have two 2025s that you really like coming on board. And then the next part would be kind of like Jaden Milner-Jones, bring in a guy who either played a good bit as a freshman or who redshirted as a freshman at a Power 5 school and needs a fresh start or something of that nature. Bring him in. You'll have Kilgore, you'll have Maizono, you'll have one of Brandon Booker or two, Brandon Booker and Zach Smith playing a lot. Justin Medlock still in the mix. We'll see how he does. Then you can have those guys kind of chill and learn and do all of those things and contribute maybe on special teams. And then you have your future really lined up, and you've added, you've replaced what you've lost after this season. So you lose 3 linebackers after this season. It wouldn't even shock me if they went and grabbed 2 linebackers in the portal. So they just need to keep building up depth there. I know it's turning into more of a nickel. Nickel is your base defense and 3 safeties and all of that, which makes a ton of sense. But maybe they don't go for 2 linebackers in the transfer portal, but I do think they'll go transfer as well and kind of do a trio just to replace depth that is lost when Jaquandis Burns, Kobe Wilson, and Mod Walker leave after this year. So Mark Iheanachor, big recruiting win. SMU over Oklahoma on their first day in the ACC. SMU wasn't done, though, going out to California. They were able to reel in a talented edge rusher. Chinedu Onyeagoro, a mouthful, but a handful on the football field. He had 21 sacks as a junior. Really talented prospect who I think in today's day and age of prospects, he's not somebody that is overly respected in a sense that, I mean, basically, if he gets a little bit of a bump up, he'll be back to a 4-star. One of the other recruiting services did do an update and must have bumped him down. So SMU gets this almost 6'3", 225-pound prospect committed. Sam Dunham, Maurice Crum kind of keying this one. But he said, I think Coach Rhett Lashlee can have us competing for a national championship. And he's best friends with Mark Iheanachor. He said it felt like home. They both silently committed earlier this month. Chinedu committed to SMU over Florida, Georgia, UCLA, and Washington. Their position here is one that I think he's going to have an opportunity to come in and play a good bit early on just because of where it'll be at come the 2025 season. And Sam Dunham has coached that position. He got the bump up to the on-field staff, and they're really excited about coming to Dallas. I mean, I watch, they call him Chin, Chin's commitment ceremony, and everybody was really excited for him out there at King Drew Medical Magnet. And, they wanted to be in the big city, and they want to be in a big city together. These are 2 childhood friends that committed to SMU and are now going to be headed to Dallas together. Gives SMU the 34th overall class in the country. That's 7th in the ACC. It has obviously dipped a little bit since Keelan Russell decommitted and flipped, and Nathan Tillman left, and some of those things. But the Mustangs still sitting with one of the best classes, in the ACC. And the good thing for SMU is that you get a guy like Chin into the class, and that type of production is something that is hard to ignore. And so he might not have, he's not Smith Orogbo where he's, a freaky 6'4"-ish, 210-pound basketball player, track, star who also has production. He's kind of a little bit of a sawed-off edge, might not have all the physical measurables that you want in a pretty-looking pass rusher, but he does have production. He has some quality programs that really wanted him. And I think for SMU, this is a nice recruiting battle to go into California and continue to kind of build that pipeline. Somebody brought up on the board, and it was a good question with where the class is right now. But CP2 Vertipop Potter is wondering, is this like a concern that SMU's class now sits with more out-of-state prospects committed than in-state? And the reality is SMU recruits Texas hard. And to go out and get a prospect like Chin when you recruited Keandre Johnson hard and he just ends up going to Arkansas, his father passes away and maybe he does want to get out of town, or maybe he just wants to go to the SEC. And sometimes you can't force a kid to go to SMU. And at the same time, you can't reach for a kid that shouldn't be at SMU because you're doing him a disservice in that standpoint as well. And so what high school coaches at around Dallas and around Texas really like is they like that SMU will be up front. They like that they'll tell them how it is. And if a kid doesn't end up picking SMU out of high school, they'll be there to catch him if they're in the transfer portal and they deserve a shot at SMU. So Chin is a prime example of why you recruit large metro areas, and Mark's the same way, and Jalen Shivers out there in Atlanta. You recruit large metro areas to find the top talent, bring them on board, and hope that they pan out. And this is a strong recruiting battle that SMU won, and they get a talented pass rusher with production who's excited to be headed to Dallas to play in Dallas and play for the Mustangs and Rhett Lashlee. So nice pair of recruiting wins for SMU on July 1st. With those additions, SMU is now up to 14 commits in the class of 2025, the highest rated one being Dalen Singleton. But with Chin and Mark, those are now two of the top 5 prospects in the class committed to the Mustangs. So 2 of the 5 highest rated ones. Chin is the second highest rated. Mark is the 5th highest rated in the class. This is a class that is largely built on defense right now, but SMU does have opportunities to add more talent to the mix. We've talked about some of the prospects that are nearing their decisions at ontheponyexpress.com. So again, subscribe there for just $1 for your first 2 months using code SMU1. That's SMU, the number 1, to join ontheponyexpress.com and get all the scoop on the Mustangs. So again, this is a class that SMU has taken some lumps, some misses, hasn't gone perfectly. Keelan Russell, they would have loved to keep. Nathan Tillman, they would have loved to keep. You have the weird scenario with Xavier Johnson. You have Cam Collins, who stays home to play for Georgia Tech. There's been some decommits and flips and things like that, and we've talked about that. But when you're also in the position that SMU's in, and they're at 14 commits now, it would not shock me if by the end of July, it might be a stretch, but they might be at 20. They might be at 20. And if they get there, that means they've finished pretty well in the month of July when guys make decisions before their senior years. And that would be important, obviously. That would give them a shot to be think of your SMU. You obviously want to be a top 10 class. You want to be the number 1 class in the country. Like every school wants that, right? But in reality, SMU knows the way to play the game. And they've tried with like a Keelan Russell. And they will probably have to address with certain prospects in the future in this class to nail down NIL and all of those things. But when you, for example, lose out on Keelan Russell and he goes elsewhere, well, SMU can now distribute that money maybe elsewhere, either through the high school ranks or come transfer portal season in December. And to wrap this back up to what we were talking about with the in-state, out-of-state, SMU staff always has a door open for Texas high school football coaches. They always have quality responses. They get out and see those programs across the state of Texas. They're honest with them, and they don't really sell a lot of BS. And so when SMU says, hey, we just don't think he could play here, which you do very rarely, unless a coach is being real pushy, get into that type of a situation. But SMU is able to keep it pretty real with them and say, hey, we're going to continue to watch him. We'll continue to watch him. That is much more respected than tossing out 10 offers at a school just to say that you recruit Texas, or taking kids that shouldn't be there, and then you kind of have to run them off after a year because you know that they can't play for you. That's what SMU does well, is walking the line and saying, you know what, if we can't find that edge in our backyard, all right, we'll go out of state a little bit. We'll go find Chin. Offensive line prospects are total crapshoot. And if Garen Justice with this class wants to land a couple of Polynesian guys because he thinks that'll help, and they're big guys, big, strong guys, then great. Then maybe that builds on that type of a prospect considering SMU. And then it ultimately helps them down the line. And they find a little niche there to get into maybe the Polynesian community and land a couple every now and again. Because that's a community that's really big on family. SMU going down to Houston for Jameco Green. There are other guys out there that they maybe could have like made a move on, turned the heat up on, maybe offered. They didn't. They pivoted a little bit in a sense and saw a guy who was emerging as a top talent in Houston. They offered him in April. He officially visited SMU. He took other official visits after that, including TCU, and he commits to SMU. So this class isn't perfect. They're still top 40 nationally. If SMU finished right there today, let's say, they add another bunch of commits or whatever, other schools do that, and SMU stays right there. And then you go out and do and execute your transfer portal plan that's led you to be one of the top schools in terms of executing in the transfer portal. You are living so large with the talent that you brought into SMU. And that's where Rhett Lashlee and his staff have a good feel for how to balance it. Some colleges are completely taking the approach of, I'm going to recruit kids that are highly recruited, have offers, and say that we recruit high school, and say that we still give a crap about recruiting high school players. And they end up maybe not being good at all because they are over recruited, they're over offered, they're topped out, they're not properly evaluated. And then they go out and just kill it in the transfer portal. Whatever, recruit over them, those guys get run off. That happens now. Where SMU's at is like, look, we've got our board. If every single one of Scott Simon's safeties opted to go somewhere else, you know what? He would probably be sitting there being like, well, damn, all right, that sucks. But you know what? They brought in Jonathan McGill. They brought in Jaden Milner-Jones from the transfer portal, CJ Sanders, and their whole back end, with Isaiah Kobe and Ahmad Moses, is an incredible combination of high school and transfers. They're not going to sweat it. They're not going to go, all right, shoot, we need to pivot. We need to go down our board and go offer X, Y, and Z players who have minimal FBS offers and, can't run. And we know they can't run, but okay, at least they could hit. They're not going to do that. And they're not going to beg kids to be at SMU. So the staff, they're sitting in a good spot. Again, there are certain things that have happened this cycle that, you can't stop Ricky Stewart from going to Texas. You can't stop Keelan Russell from going to Alabama. You can't stop Nathan Tillman probably ending up at Texas, or even TCU. If Nathan Tillman wants to, mislead and end up taking a TCU official visit, and SMU ends up moving on from him, which they did, that is just something that, yes, you lost that recruiting battle with Nathan Tillman. There's no question. But that is a somewhat red flag when you handle it that way. And that's where SMU isn't going to beg and NIL a kid and be like, no, like, come on, you got to come back. We can't, we need you. We this, that. You can't go TCU. You can't go Texas. Like, fix it with money. That just sets you up for long-term failure in terms of why the kids are at SMU. Ultimately, it is on the coaches to bring in guys who want to be at SMU, who are talented, and they don't have to beg and, money whip them to be there. That's the truth. And if there are staffers that eventually, as we sit here and evaluate this staff as they go into the ACC in the years to come, if there are guys that can't accomplish that at a high enough level, they'll probably move on. This is the first year that SMU has been in the ACC. And it's borderline not even a full cycle. So now we'll see the 26th. We'll really be able to assess. They'll have tangible stadium proof that in all likelihood, you're going to be playing in front of big crowds against BYU, TCU, Florida State, Boston College, who knows? Cal's on Thanksgiving weekend. We know how that one goes. But there's so much that, yes, SMU has gone to the ACC now. There is so much that is promising with facilities and what SMU did in the American and all of those things. But the final piece is that tangible stadium experience. and actually getting the final product of the Gary Weber end zone complex done, which is incredible. And it is that type of a facility that is a just gold standard type of facility. But they still just need that last piece of tangible proof, and to circle it all the way back around to what we talked about in the beginning with the commitment money wise. I'm not saying it's happening anytime soon, but it's 2024 right now. I would love to make a loose bet that SMU has done something major to the east side of the stadium, or something on the west, or something in the north, to give it a much bigger feel and also upgrade it by the end of this decade. And I know people are going to say, oh my God, I can't believe you have to wait that. Think about what would have to happen for that to happen. So think multiple years in the ACC, getting your feet under you money wise, getting all settled in, maybe some more success. And then saying, and I do think this is true. Ford Stadium is a nice stadium. The end zone complex completely makes it look different from a field perspective. It really does. So once that feeling is there for SMU fans, for players, for recruits, the next step is to build it on an east side and bring it up and make you feel like you're on top of it. The way Ford Stadium is built, it is just not, you don't walk in there and say, wow, this place is like huge. Like, I walked into East Carolina Stadium, quite honestly, and I mean, it has a big feel to it. It's not a massive 100,000 seat stadium, don't get me wrong. It is a large stadium, though, that is right on top of you. And however SMU could one day figure out how to make Ford feel anything like that, that should be the next project. It would cost $250 million, I would imagine, to level some part of the east side, all the east side, and build it up and do something different. Bring in a deck situation. Don't know what has to happen, but that would be kind of that only piece. And I can't wait for the fall for SMU to get some of that tangible stadium feel. It's going to be exciting. Recruiting, I can tell you what, guys, subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com. Some big news coming as SMU is now in the ACC, and they are not done adding commitments. And so we'll be tracking that for you guys at ontheponyexpress.com. Wanted to do a long podcast for you guys because I know it had been a minute, and what a start to the week it's been for SMU. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys enjoy your 4th of July. I will. Hope you do as well. Hopefully on Friday we can talk again, and we will break more down for you guys on the recruiting side of things. And we'll be hanging out at ontheponyexpress.com. Be sure to talk to our friends at statusjet.com. Go there and check out all the different planes that they have available for you. You and your friends can book your trip to an SMU game wherever you want to go see the Mustangs, whether it be the football field. You can go out to the West Coast. You can go to the East Coast, Duke, Virginia, go to Louisville, wherever you want to go. StatusJet can get you there when you use code PonyUpACC for a discount on a round-trip flight. Give them a call, see if something works. I'm telling you, they have done this for years now for SMU fans. They have booked incredible travel opportunities and experiences with 10, 12, 15, 16 people and more to get them from Dallas or wherever they're going to wherever their game day destination is to catch the Mustangs play. So talk with your friends. Maybe it's something that, look, we can fly in the day of and we can be back at home in our beds by, 1, 2 a.m., depending on where the game is. Don't have to spend money on 2 nights of hotel. You don't have to worry about all the hassle of going through TSA. Talk with your friends, start making plans for the fall with our friends at StatusJet. So also, Thank you guys for all the support at ontheponyexpress.com. We're just about to go over the 900 subscriber mark. Tell your friends if they're wondering about ACC news, recruiting, team, all that. July is here. We're now going to start ramping up our team stuff. I'll be talking with various sources about how summer workouts are going for the Mustangs. This is the time of year that you want to jump on ontheponyexpress.com and learn more about how the Mustangs are faring. So whether it be recruiting or team, we got you guys covered. So hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. And we'll catch you guys hopefully on Friday, but if not, Monday for sure, with another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.